welcome back for a brand new episode of The Witching Hour. I am Perri Nemiroff, and here is my co-host, Haleigh Foutch.
Hello.
Haleigh, how are you feeling?
I'm okay. It's my turn.
I know.
Got a little head cold going, but we're here. We're not going to miss our witching hour.
Never.
Yeah.
Never. I mean, it really does feel like things just get passed around this office.
It is so true.
But then again, it's like we're always out and about. We're at screenings.
Yeah.
We're in the air. Who knows what we caught these things from?
Everyone we know is always traveling, so it's impossible to even try to source it.
Yeah. There's no patient zero here.
Yeah.
It just happens. It just happens. Suck it up. We get over it. And we still talk about us.
We do.
So this episode of The Witching Hour is going to be very, very heavy into spoilers for us. But before we really dig into those spoilers and also all the theories that are circulating out there, we have a little bonus review for you right now because Haleigh is super into the OA. They just released season 2, and you've got a mini review.
I do have a mini review. I just couldn't sit with myself if I didn't bring it up. It's not horror in the slightest, but it is certainly wild genre. And I was, as many people were, a little bit mixed on the first season, didn't quite know what to make of it. Oh, no, are you okay?
Just bang my elbow on the table so hard for everyone who can't see.
What was that noise? Perri's suffering. Oh,
okay.
No.
It's all right. I'll live.
Yeah, so I was a little mixed on that first season. It didn't allow you to interpret it very easily, and it really threaded this needle between what's real and what's not real that you're being told. That wasn't very enjoyable. Season 2 dispenses with all that nonsense and just tells you a crazy sci-fi fantasy story that's wondrous and weird. It's like easily the weirdest thing on TV right now. This is like almost Twin Peaks levels of weird. And I'm just super impressed by it. I'm impressed by the imagination. It's Britt Marling and Zal Batmanlij. I'm so bad at names.
It's a good effort. I don't think I would have done much better.
I'm very bad. I'm sorry. But they are very creative people. They are the filmmakers behind The Sound of My Voice. And Britt Marling also co-wrote I, Origins and Another Earth with Mike Cahill. And they're just really creative genre storytellers that I'm super excited about. I've had a lot of fun. Vinny in the office, he's also obsessed with it. And it's just the kind of show that when you watch it, you won't stop wanting to talk about it, which is why I'm telling you guys about it right now. Check it out. Seasons 1 and 2 are on Netflix, and I can't recommend the insane. You'll feel like you're on a drug trip. It's wonderful.
Questions for you. Do you think it suits my taste? Well, I like it.
I don't know. It's interesting. It might be... maybe a little too ponderous and up its own butt sometimes. It's definitely intentionally weird.
How many episodes are we talking?
We are talking 8 per season, so it's not a huge investment.
It's like a middle-of-the-road investment.
Yeah, and it's one of those shows that, again, kind of ponderous at times and a little up its own butt. The episodes can range from 43 minutes to an hour and 10, depending on whatever the story needs.
Ah, I gotcha.
Yes.
Okay.
So stuff like that is what I'm talking about. But I love it anyway.
I don't know if that was the best self to inspire me to download the episodes. Right now, the priorities for me are... I'm going to finish Mindhunter Season 1, which I'm really into. And also, I have some catching up to do with Star Trek Discovery. And I just realized that CBS All Access lets you download their episodes. So that is a game changer for me.
Awesome. Yeah, I watched the OA downloaded. So networks, make your stuff downloadable.
I know. It's such a big difference.
Game changer.
Seriously. I mean, I know Wi-Fi is like everywhere now, but you need to be able to have things on the go just in case.
I know. All right. Yes.
You ready for the big topic?
I'm doing my best with the brain power.
Oh boy,
I got today.
I know. I really do think if you're on any cold medication, you'll be able to tap into another plane of thinking. And actually, Haleigh might have all the answers for us.
Yes.
All these theories might go out the window because of what you come up with today.
I am untethered by Alka-Seltzer Plus.
So right now is your spoiler warning for us. We are diving into spoilers. We are diving into Easter eggs, theories, you name it. If you have not seen the movie, do not spoil it for yourself right now. Go watch the movie, then come back and have this conversation with us. So, all right. Curious, after you've had time to kind of sit with it, what idea rose to the top? Is there anything that you're really harping on that maybe you weren't thinking so much about right after your initial viewing? Because I don't know if we've reconnected since that last spoiler talk.
Yeah, I don't think so. I wouldn't say that it's anything new has come up. It's more that I've prodded deeper into the things I was already thinking about. I mean, there have been new theories and stuff, and we'll get to some of them, some of which I say no, very much no, and some of which are like, oh, that's an interesting perspective on it. But in general, it's been more a process of thinking about the themes I had sort of set my sights on and then seeing other writers and their interpretations on them. There's some brilliant pieces out
There really
over the
are.
weekend that just, you know, weren't different from my takeaway, but just, again, deeper. Like, they saw more about it than I did. So
This
it's
is
been fun.
what's making me fall in love with this movie even more is that I'm falling in love with the conversation.
It's nice.
I'm just so like full and satisfied, even though I don't have all the answers, which is a very unusual feeling for me. So at this point in time, I'm fully embracing that this is my favorite movie of the year thus far. I know we have a long way to go, but I can't get enough of this conversation. So to start here, I feel like the first thing we have to do in order to make all of this make sense is just recap what happens at the end of the movie, which is that the reveal is we find out that Adelaide isn't really Adelaide, but she is actually Red. When they were teeny tiny children, they actually swap spots. So that's kind of what leads us into all of the big reveals and kind of makes the experience something entirely different when you go back and you have your second viewing and watch the whole story play out from another perspective. So one thing that I've been thinking about quite a bit since then, and I was looking forward to telling you about this because I don't think you read this explainer on the site just yet, is this idea that Matt put in my head, which is just the idea of the soul and what it really means. And actually, to backtrack a little here, because I think this thing needs to come first, is I'm curious to get your take on this, because the way I read Red's explanation of precisely what's happening in that facility at the end is I look at it as her being an unreliable narrator, because based on what I see in the film, it looks like all of the people who created that facility, the government employees or whatever you want to call them, they're long gone by the time she gets there. Also, none of the tethered speak. So I look at her story as basically a version of that story, her doing her best to put the pieces together based on the resources she has and what she sees around her. So there is nothing to say that exactly the way she puts it in the third act of Us is the way it actually happened.
I think that's fair to take from the context cues. I also think at a certain point you're being annoying as a filmmaker if you're going to take the time to explain that much in detail, but then expect audiences to go, but that's not really what happened. Well, I don't know. It's already towing a thin line between too much and not enough information as is. So throwing that wrench into my thinking pattern about it might just frustrate me more than anything. I see what you're saying to a point.
Yeah.
I do think that the overall gist of what she says should be taken at face value.
Okay. I think I fall on the opposite side of that, and I like the real world implications for something like that, because I think it's basically speaking to this idea of none of us really know the specifics of what is going on behind closed doors, but we're all acting on it. We're basically all hearing news and making assumptions based on what we see other people do, what we see on Twitter, like you name it, and then we're acting on it. And that's exactly what she did in the movie. So I'm not so hung up on the idea of, oh, you gave me an exposition dump and it sucks if it's not all accurate. I kind of just respect her perspective there and the fact that many other people out there could have a different tale to tell.
That's true. I guess my only, so we might be viewing this slightly different in the way we're talking about it. To me, it's important that at the bare minimum, the basics of there was a government or military operation that did this and then they left them alone. That's what I need to be true.
Yeah.
Everything else can be up for her interpretation.
I think is true.
Yeah.
And, I don't necessarily think Peele is spelling it out as a definitive truth, but I do think I probably, if I were in her shoes, would have made a very similar assumption based on how that tunnel is designed. Yeah. So I do think we do have that foundation at the very least.
That's all I'm saying. Also, because if that's not true, then you've done your film a real disservice by explaining something that's scary or unexplained.
So then it leads into the idea of the soul. And I think this is just such a beautiful concept, too, is that when Red explains what is going on down there, it is revealed that the government was able to clone physical human bodies. The thing that they couldn't duplicate was the soul. So presumably, everybody above has a soul, and none of the tethered are able to have a soul because they couldn't clone it. That can't be true, though, because otherwise, how could Red, original little Red, get out of the facility and then have a life for herself? And it just speaks to this idea that we're basically all just like a product of circumstances and what we're surrounded by and the luxuries that we're afforded given our position in the world. And I just think that's such a beautiful touch, and I think that speaks to just about everything he's trying to achieve and convey in us overall.
Yeah, I agree with that, definitely. That's, again, maybe when I was saying a different lens on the same perspective that I have. I hadn't thought of it as much in terms of the soul, because I think when I heard that line, and I'm not saying it's the right way to hear it, but I interpreted it more as not that the people underground don't have a soul, but they could not replicate the same soul. Does, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there's
or maybe that they shared it. They shared the soul.
Maybe.
They shared the soul with the people above. Okay, so they shared the soul with the people above ground having control because of their environment that they're in. They have the intellectual capabilities and the experience to be able to manipulate the soul and take the upper hand. It was only when Little Red decided she was going to take the other hand that she could gain control.
I think my read is that they have their own souls. That's just
Everybody has their own.
my take on it, and that you can be totally different in your read on it. And there is something to be said for the idea that they share one, because the whole film is that we are our own worst nightmare and things like that. But yeah, the idea that Adelaide becomes who she is because she has advantages and resources, and that Red becomes who she is because she's disenfranchised is absolutely, I think, the key of it, no matter how you interpret specifically the line on the soul.
It's so freaking crushing. I just keep thinking about all those visuals, and it's like, that's one of the things that I've taken with me, too. I mean, I know there aren't people living down in tunnels. There's no duplicate of me down below, but it's just like, it's a movie that has basically made me think of every single thing I do, and just like how lucky I am to have certain things, even though I want more. It's like what I have, there's someone out there that doesn't have nearly enough. So it's like the most simple thing from like, I don't know, like brushing your teeth in the morning or being able to have what you want for lunch. Yeah. That's super important, and I appreciate a movie that reminds me how lucky I am to have certain things.
Yeah, that's awesome that it reinforced that perspective for you, and I definitely think that is part of what makes Jordan Peele such a powerful filmmaker, is he takes, axioms of truth, basically, that we all kind of know. I mean, Get Out was a very specific American truth, and this is also a film about America, but and he makes you, it not forces you to confront them, because it's not that hostile. He makes it entertaining to confront them and makes it fun to, not necessarily fun, but engaging to think about on a deeper level.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I admire him so much as a filmmaker, and that's why I really love Us. And I do understand, and I don't judge anybody out there who didn't love it quite like I do, but it's really exciting to have a movie that operates on both of those levels. I do think that you could just sit there and enjoy a very entertaining thrill, but you could also kind of go down the rabbit hole, so to speak, with how I'm handling it, where I'm obsessing over every single detail, applying it to everything that happens in the movie, but I'm also applying it to my own life.
That's great.
Yeah, I kind of like it.
Way to go, Jordan Peele.
Yeah,
He's
really.
one of our most exciting voices out there. I was watching YouTube nonsense last night, and an old Mad TV video came up, and I was just like, man, this guy, like, he was even downright hysterical back in those days, like early in his sketch comedy career, before Key and Peele made everyone go, oh yeah, they're geniuses. He's just been great for so long.
I want to touch on something that you brought up earlier, because you said you were reading a whole bunch of explainers online that dug deeper into things that you were already thinking about. Do you have any examples of that?
I do.
Please share.
My favorite, I know her name was, I believe, and again, I might be saying it wrong because I've only ever read it, Brooke Obi.
Okay.
For a website I have not been to, but now I'm excited to return to. So it's Shadow and Act, And she wrote this phenomenal explainer that I retweeted over the weekend. It's the best one I've read. And I read quite a few trying to, put my ideas up against other people's, see what came out strongest. And, just like we've all been working through our feelings on it. But she wrote this phenomenal review that very much, explainer, that digs into very much what we were talking about, how whether you are given access or whether you are disenfranchised shapes your person and what you can have, and how easy we are to overlook things that don't, that are hard to look at, essentially. She has a line in here that I found, as someone who lives in LA, quite potent. It was like, we can walk over these ideas the way we walk over the legs of homeless people in the street and things like that.
Oof, God.
Yeah, brutal, right?
I mean, it's very, very accurate.
Yeah.
It's very accurate. I mean, it's like the whole idea, too, of just like how quick we are to brush problems under the rug. I mean, you could look at something like global warming, and yes, many of us are like, this is a problem and we need to take care of it. But how many of us are actually stopping every single thing we possibly can do in order to stop global warming? It's kind of like a sweeping it under the rug kind of effect.
I watched, again, when I'm on the weekends, when I'm trying to sleep, sometimes I watch YouTube stuff. And one of the videos I saw was a girl who showed all her trash from the last 5 years, and it fit in one glass jar. And I was like, okay, well, I'm a monster.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking about it. I stopped doing this, thankfully, but I used to think about that every single time I used a plastic straw.
Oh, sure.
And then, thankfully, that changed courtesy of Sundance and the metal straws they gave me. But, I mean, it really does speak to that visual that you were just describing, and it's just, like, the way we are just, like, so quick to write certain things off that don't pertain to ourselves or put what we have in jeopardy.
I think there's a really nice example of this in the film, and I noticed it in the movie and thought it was like a funny thing, but I think it was maybe Vox's explainer that made me realize how thematically connective it is to the film itself. But the fact that the Hall of Mirrors in the 80s was like exploiting Native American imagery, and then when they go back as an adult, it's now a wizard.
Yeah.
But it's all still the same inside, so they just kind of pasted over the offensive part without fixing anything about it. I just took it as a joke, like, haha, cultural appropriation, now we're, I guess, better, but I didn't connect it as well as they did on the Vox one.
No, I didn't think about it quite like that either. Yeah. I mean, there's so many details. There's so many things that I didn't pick up on the first time or the second time for that matter, and then I'm seeing pop up in a ton of explainers out there.
I'm excited to keep watching it from this thematic point of view because, as I said in the in our spoiler review, which in case you guys didn't listen to, I will sum up really quick, that I watched the film assuming that we were supposed to know what ended up being the twist, which was that Adelaide was red and red was Adelaide. So I won't really be able to go back and have that second time experience of seeing it from, her two different perspectives because I already did that. But I am so excited for all the different details to notice along the way that don't necessarily pertain to that reveal.
Yeah. No, I see where you're coming from with that. I've been thinking about that a lot and, exactly when I picked up on that reveal. And I feel like Peele might have, and again, everything we're talking about is speculation. He hasn't really spelled out almost anything. I've caught a couple of quotes that I think...
many interviews, it seems.
Good, and good for him. I like this idea of keeping the mystery alive and not giving us a perfect explanation of exactly what he's trying to do here. But I do suspect that even though it's very convenient and easy to call that a twist, I don't necessarily think he meant it to be that quite like we're all discussing it. I think it is kind of up to the viewer to figure out for themselves when they figured that out. And it's just a matter of us all having a different experience, coming at it from a different perspective, coming at it in a different mood. You just never know. And God, I think that's the beauty of something like this.
It's cool. I'm just a little envious that I don't get to see it two ways. I got to see Get Out two ways. And I don't think that it's hidden. I think which is why I assumed that's what the movie was.
I think I questioned it more so than anything. It's like the idea definitely crossed my mind at the very beginning, but I'm trying to remember back to what my initial reaction was, and I'm like, oh, no way. Like, especially because so much of the idea is just like your perception of another. And Adelaide, as in the above ground character that we start with, is painted as such like a loving, wonderful mother. And that family is so charming that I wasn't challenged to read into it quite like that. And I wasn't really challenged initially to think anything else of her other than, the surface level version of that character that I painted upon her.
Yeah.
So I kind of like it subverting expectations like that. And it is just fascinating to watch how quickly someone is able to kind of get rid of everything they are on the surface in order to hold tight to what they have, and how they're willing to sacrifice like ethics and morals and like personal behavior choices in order to make sure like I don't lose what I think is rightfully mine.
Right, which I think is the other really key thematic element of this film, is that we are our own worst nightmare, and we're all afraid of the big bad that's coming for us, but we are the big bad. And I think that, at least from my interpretation, a lot of the humor in the film is mined from that because of how quickly the family eases into violence. Just as easily as the tethered are violent, so are they.
Okay, so I have another theory about that.
Okay.
But first, I think we should dig into this theory that I found online that I am semi-obsessed with. And I don't know if this individual was the person who started the whole conversation, but he did do a very interesting explainer, and I think he laid it out very well. So I'm going to give a little shout out to 3C Films on YouTube. He's got 2 explainers up, but one of them is titled Hidden Twist in Jordan Peele's Us Explained. And he suggests that the hidden twist in the movie is that Adelaide/Red weren't the only 2 that were swapped. Also, Jason and Pluto were swapped in a previous summer, and I believe his explainer specifies that it was the summer before. And he lays out a number of things in the film that make it very convincing. When I brought this up in our Collider.com Slack and Matt told me why he doesn't believe in it, I'm kind of hung up on that, because if I can't explain something thematically, I am not as easy to believe in it based on how everything else in Us is explained in my head at the moment. But there are a number of things that I think serve this theory very well. One of the first ones being that they say in the movie that in the previous summer, like, what, didn't Jason get locked in the closet? That could have been an opportune time to swap him out. There's also the thing with the magic trick, and the magic trick isn't something that's lightly used throughout the entire film. Like, he had it, he knew how to do it, and then he forgot how to do it. And I know that a lot are saying that, like, oh, maybe, how could he have learned to speak English so well over such a short period of time? But we can't forget that Red is one of the only ones down below who can speak English. And if he was like kind of a pet by her side a little, and he's clearly closer with Red than Abraham and Umbre are. So they clearly have something else that's special. So I don't know. I'm thinking that this theory is very plausible and this really could have happened.
I am of the opposite opinion. I'm not 100% like, no, it's impossible. I just think it's very unlikely. And my read on his character in general is so different that for that to be true would kind of invalidate my whole feel on what his ending reaction means. And like, it would cripple parts of my view on the film to such an extent that it's very hard for me to see it being true.
Okay. The ending reaction throws a little bit of a wrench into this. I will admit that.
Also, I even though you make a point that Red does speak English, she speaks it very weird. And he speaks very normally.
And he does not, yeah.
Also, alternatively, the young boy, Pluto, it takes more than a year, I believe, to go that, far off if you were a normal kid to then crash to, why can't I think? Just to lose social skills to that extent. Or feral, I guess is the word I'm looking for.
Yeah. I mean, even if it wasn't that summer, it was the summer before.
Right.
I don't know.
It's pretty quick.
One of the other things that this video brings up is, the moment where Pluto and Jason connect and he walks him into the fire.
Yeah.
It's just like you see this look in both Adelaide and Red's eyes that are when they're looking at the 2 boys. And keep in mind, Red is looking at Jason as we know him to be, and Adelaide is looking at Pluto as he goes into the fire. They both kind of look at them as though there's like an added connection there. Like, why else would Adelaide not want that boy to walk into the fire? And then the way that Red looks at Jason and like whisks him away.
I think maybe
there's like an added connection there.
Could be, but to me, it's sort of like the lives that could have been for each of them. And they're seeing, especially, you know, it's probably not a blast to see any child immolate himself.
Well, yeah. Even though this one is a murderous threat.
Totally, but that's the point. So are we.
Yeah.
Everyone is.
That's true. That's true.
Also, so I believe it was that Brooke Ovey piece. If I can find it really quick, I want to read you her last bit about this boy because I think it's really powerful. And also, I don't know if it was hers or someone else. It's definitely not my idea, and I think it's a really clever thing. They were saying that possibly the reason Pluto's face is burned is because the previous summer Jason was playing with his magic trick and
it was
underground.
Working. He's lighting matches and he burns his face that way. Yeah, I've seen that, and I think that's very plausible here.
I like that, and I think that fits more in line with the themes of the film of your unexpected consequences that you reap on the world. So here's her part. All right. So she's talking about when she gives that evil grin at the very end, and Jason is like, fuck. So she says, but what will Jason do with this secret? Shadow Jason wore a mask because his mouth was burnt shut. He didn't have a choice but to keep quiet about what he knew. And what did he know? Did he know that Red was human? But sidetrack. Jordan's mouth, on the other hand, is undamaged. Jason's mouth, on the other hand, is undamaged, but after making eye contact with his creepy mother, he drops his mask slowly over his face. Perhaps it's his way of showing he accepts his shadow self and his scary-ass mama, too. They are a part of each other, after all. Perhaps he puts on the mask for protection against her, and he's crying behind it, like Red is in the film's poster, knowing things could never be the same between them. Either way, it's evident that he's keeping his mouth shut, and the cycle of deadly silence continues.
Wow, that's a great interpretation. Yeah. To sidestep away from the Jason thing. So when I first read that theory, obviously there are certain plot points that I'm buying into, that a lot of things were peppered throughout the film that makes this, you know, semi-realistic to me, but something's stopping me from fully believing it. And that led me to think, and I haven't seen many discuss this out there, that technically Jason and Zora are half-tethered. I'm surprised.
I have not seen that discussed
I'm surprised
either.
that nobody has brought that up. Because
that is fantastic.
I do think that's why this family fared better than any other family. It's because they have some of that feral nature in them. And I think that's why they were quicker to turn to violence. And I also think that maybe in Zora's case, that's why she's quicker to turn to violence and so easy, like it's easy for her to kill the twins kind of thing. Or at least, you know, she doesn't hold back at all. And then when it comes to Jason, I wonder if him being half-tethered is why he has that moment with Pluto in the closet. Because he's clearly not... He's clearly scared, but he's not running away. He's not trying to fight. They're in that closet like having a shared connection together, and he clearly has a physical connection that nobody else quite has with their tethered. So I don't know. Maybe the fact that they are born of a tethered person and an above-ground human as we know them to be, maybe that has something to do with how they respond to this whole thing.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. I mean, I would need to rewatch it with that in mind because I haven't pondered on it. And you're right, it's weird that hasn't been discussed very much. I would be curious rewatching, do we then see that there's more human, so to speak, qualities in their kids? I mean, the girl's pretty much, as Red describes her, a monster, right? It's interesting. It's a good question. I'm not 100% sold on what it means for the family, but I like asking those kinds of questions.
It is interesting. Yeah. I mean, the way you just put it, too. I mean, do we see more human in them? And I do think that is the case with Pluto. I think we see a different type of connection there, but I can't make the same case for Umbre off the top of my head.
She's just terrifying.
That's her double's name, right?
I don't remember them all off the top of my head.
It's been so weird having these conversations because I keep, like, changing the names. And
I know.
It's very difficult to talk about Red and Adelaide in particular because technically they're not who they say they are, but maybe Red assumed that name after after the swap. I don't know.
Same, and like as I mentioned, the OA at the beginning of this, it's a series that takes place across dimensions, and so it's the same problem of trying to talk about the same character in a different. My brain basically this weekend exploded trying to think about the OA and Us at the same time.
I can understand that. That's why after I saw Us for a second time, I just cracked open Scary Stories, which is very much written for younger readers and very easy for me to process.
Fabulous.
But I'm very, very wrapped up in that whole idea right now and trying to piece it together and just what it might mean. Because, again, talking about themes and ideas, that would make so much sense to me, the way that, it'll just represent how, even though we see each other differently, technically we're all still the same. We're all influenced by each other. And just this idea of, certain individuals getting together and passing down certain traits, because that's something that's been the truth for our entire existence. So technically we're all at least partly the same.
Right. Well boy, genetics.
Yeah.
Tricky. Didn't study them. I did get my 23andMe kit done last year.
Did you really?
I'm very boring.
What did you learn? Are you allowed to tell us anything about yourself?
I'm so boring.
Okay.
It is just the whitest thing that ever was born.
I think about doing that every so often.
It's insanely, I was just, I am such a loser. It's like 50% UK, 40% Western Europe, and then like 5% something else that's over there. And then 1% Iberian, which I think is also white, maybe. I don't know.
Okay.
I was just like, wow. If you were expecting an interesting, turns out I'm actually royalty from Spain, I did not get that.
Is that what you were hoping for?
No.
I'm curious now. I kind of want to do it.
Yeah.
All right. Where did we leave off here? I don't know. Do you have any additional takes on the whole Hands Across America theme? Because I am also fascinated by what that says about Red's agenda overall.
To me, I think I take it the way most people have taken it. It's just like this poor young girl's dream of something that was supposed to be inspirational and united humanity, and ultimately didn't do that much good.
I know. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
I mean, for those of you who don't know, the one thing about Hands Across America in the moment was that, yes, they did raise a significant amount of money, but at what cost? They spent way more. They didn't reach their fundraising goals. So while the intentions were great, the effort was noble, ultimately it was kind of a fundraising failure. But then on top of that, you have this moment where so many people out there join hands and want to fight poverty. But then years and decades later, we're kind of in the same position, and I think that ties right back to what Adelaide tells to Jason at the end of the movie. He's like, this whole crazy thing happened, but don't worry, we're going to go right back to normal at some point soon. And I think that's kind of what Hands Across America's influence on the film is saying to everybody.
I think you're right. I can't logically conceive of how that could be true if America just got killed. But I guess maybe the point is that it doesn't matter, like whether it's the tethered or the untethered. It's just going to go back to the same.
It's ultimately we will sort ourselves out again, and the wealthy, the 1%, the higher ups will push the others down again, and we're going to wind up in the same terrible situation again.
Yeah. Pretty much.
It's so crushing.
It's not a feel-good film.
No, it's not.
But surprisingly, feels good to watch.
Yeah, I can't quite describe that. And I think I had a very similar reaction to Pet Sematary, which is also like a vicious, violent, dark film. But like, as I described when we reviewed it after, I felt like I was floating after I walked out of that theater. Maybe it just had something to do with the thrill that I got out of ending South by Southwest on such a high note quality-wise, and also because I was a little bummed by what we saw the night before. So the fact that this was so good and met all my expectations made me really happy. I don't know.
I think so, because that I definitely would not say is fun to watch. I mean, it's a good movie, but there are scenes that
not fun.
Really hurt. And like
not fun, but highly entertaining.
Totally. Definitely different vibes though for me. Like Pet Sematary is dark in a way that I don't think Us is. Pet Sematary is dark in like a like a personal, like
Yeah.
vindictive way. And
It does have a really weird sense of humor, though.
oh, totally. I'm not saying it's not a good movie to watch. I'm just saying I did not like this movie.
This is like laugh out loud funny.
yes, and Pet Sematary is like cover your mouth, fucked up.
Yeah. That is definitely one way to describe it. Yet I can't wait to see it again.
I'm excited.
What have we not hit on? Okay. Actually, symbolism, scissors and rabbits. What is your take on, I don't know, let's start with rabbits maybe?
I don't know quite about the rabbits. I mean, like I have, which I'm less interested in, like logical reads on it, which is it's easy to sustain rabbits as a food source.
Yes. They reproduce.
Right.
A lot.
There are many, and they can be eaten easily.
I know.
Not for me. It would be very hard. But I guess that's the point. If that's all you have, that's all you get. Yeah, I'm not sure the symbolism of rabbits. I did see, like, in one interview that Jordan Peele said he's afraid of rabbits.
Yeah. I think the way he described it in that interview is something along the lines of, like, their eyes are so black and empty that, like, they're probably sociopaths. I think that's how he described it.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably one of the only things, that and maybe the scissors, actually, that he actually, described, the influence and why he decided to incorporate it into the film.
Yeah.
But I do love the touch at the end that Jason basically leaves with a cute pet rabbit at the end. It made me feel a little better.
Aw.
Yeah, at least one rabbit is going to have a hopefully decent life.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like if Jordan Peele feels that negatively about rabbits, isn't that kind of a bad thing that he goes home with one in terms of analyzing the film?
I do think in analyzing the film, it's basically just another example of the way we are is all based on what we're exposed to,
Right.
and it's our different interpretations on something. It's like he's basically keeping this cute, cuddly thing he saw as a pet. Meanwhile, Pluto was forced to eat this thing because he had nothing else. So it's just like another way to represent how miserable this duality is. And also, it's just like, when you think about the humans getting to live life in the sun up above, these wonderful things can be pets, and like everything is just like a miserable counterpart down below. He also did speak a little bit about the scissors thing, and I'm fascinated by this one way he describes scissors, which is, this dull thing that we think of as an office supply. You can go to Staples and just buy any old pair of scissors. What's the big deal? But on the flip side, they could be used as a tool for violence.
Sure.
So it's kind of that duality at work here.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
I found that statement interesting. Because, like, you could think about that with anything in the world. Like, I'm just looking around the room. It's like, I don't know, that stupid piece of paper could be used to give people paper cuts.
No, totally. I used to, no joke, me and my friends would, like, it's not as fucked up as it sounds. We were theater kids. We like to come up with stories. But we would be like, let's figure out how everything in this room could kill you.
That's like a Final Destination mindset that I'm stuck with for the rest of my life now.
Yeah. It's, everything's a weapon if you think about it hard enough.
Oh, no. I'm wondering, so we now can't look at teacups the same way. We can't look at scissors the same way. What are the next two objects that Jordan Peele is going to ruin for us in his quartet of thrillers
You
here?
know what? Tea was pretty personally hard to take. I'm a big tea drinker.
What is your take on these two movies being connected?
No.
No?
Plot-wise?
Yeah.
No.
I know a lot of people out there are saying that they could take place in the same reality. Like in another town over, we have what's happening in Get Out. Maybe not at the exact same time, but they exist in the same reality.
I'm not into that. If he wants to go that way and do, like, his Black Mirror world or whatever, you do you, Jordan Peele. Who am I to question you? I'm personally say no. I don't. I think that they exist. I think that they're taking on themes that are, of course, shared because they come from the real world, but he is making new worlds out of them.
I agree. I definitely look at it that way. And, I know there's certain things like, what was it, the Fruit Loops.
Yeah.
The Fruit Loops are in a scene in Us, and at one point Winston Duke says no, 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 and obviously that brought me back to when it's said in Get Out, but I don't think these are connected. I don't think he's building a shared universe. I think that his style of filmmaking alone just shows that he's not into that kind of thing. I mean, the fact that we're discussing Us like we are now, and he's not trying to explain it away so we all understand his original intention, I think that's a sure sign that he is not thinking of the connective tissue between those two worlds from a plot perspective. It's more thematic. And I think that's what we're going to continue to see in these next two films.
I agree. And I think, as fun as it is to have shared universes and it's fun to have those little online theories and Easter eggs and stuff, you do start inhibiting the value of your individual stories when you force all of your metaphors to connect by saying they're all in the same world.
Well, and also forcing viewers to watch things in a certain order, not being able to discover, the third film in this quartet first. I mean, it just, I think it kind of hurts the idea of someone jumping in whenever they feel like it and then exploring these films in any order.
Yeah, I'm not about it. I think actually, I believe he posted it. Steve had an interview he did at South by with Lupita and Winston and the kids.
Oh my, have you watched that interview?
It's very cute.
Evan Alex has my heart.
He's adorable.
He is something else.
They all said they were, what was it? I was fired up.
Yeah.
He is so funny. But what I was just going to say really quick is that Lupita actually addresses this question, and she's very much not into it.
I was so happy to have one teeny tiny encounter with Lupita before that interview happened because I was so jealous of Steve. So if I could have taken one interview from him this entire time, it would have been that one.
Well, he's such a horror fan.
I know. I happened to have gone to the bathroom and I was washing my hands, and who walked into the bathroom but Lupita freaking Nyong'o? Nice. And I threw like my gross soaking wet hands up in the air and I'm like, you're so good and you're so good in Little Monsters. And all I wanted to do was talk to her more. But like, that's really awkward. She's using the restroom.
Yeah, it's not
that's
a great
weird.
time.
So I left it at that like a grown adult and I walked out.
Good for you.
Yeah, I was surprised I kept it together.
Good job.
I'm like hardcore fanning out over this movie. I don't think I've gotten something kind of like drilled into my brain to an obsessive extent like this in quite a while.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's how I was with Suspiria last year, so I totally get it.
Yeah, and it's just like I'm really, if you knew how many times I listened to that one part of the score after I downloaded it, you would think I would have problems. It's like I wonder if my neighbor can hear what I'm listening to through the walls, because it's just, when you buy something on iTunes and then if you don't add it to a playlist, you just have to click the song if you want to play it. So it's like then I went about my business so that one song kept repeating because I only bought one at that particular moment. And it's so good, and it just like gets the energy flowing and it gets me all hyped all over again.
Nice.
Someone, I think in the comments of our spoiler talk, wrote, I can't wait to see how Perri uses this for her end of the year montage. And I can already tell you that part of the score is going to be the horror part of my montage. And
spoilers.
There are so many songs. There are so many visuals in just the trailer alone that I'm already picturing how they're going to fit. I love it. I love it so much. I think we've hit the end of my list of topics that I wanted to discuss with you. Is there anything theory-wise that kind of crossed your eye that we haven't tapped into?
I feel like we hit all the big stuff. I
mean, maybe the Jeremiah 11:11 stuff.
That
we haven't really spoken about that.
I did want to touch on. Yes, and I have my tab open here somewhere. So good call, because that was the one thing. It's interesting. I don't know. I'm sure there are many, many appearances of 11:11 in this.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
Wait, before we even get into it, do you do that? Is that like a lucky thing for you? Because I know my family's a little obsessed with it, where whenever it's 11:11 on a clock, it's like, stop everything, 11:11, make a wish.
Oh, yeah. We're not that extreme, but definitely it was a saying. It was more like a lighthearted, like 11:11, make a wish.
Yeah. But my family might have been a little more intense about it, but it's all fun and games.
Yeah. We're not very superstitious. I'm not. My mom is. She's a big conspiracy theory.
I got a little of that in me. That's for sure.
So the one that I noticed that I was like, I know there are many more, but the one that I was like, so subtle was during the baseball game. they say something like, and it's 11-11, and we're at this score.
Oh, the football game that
On the
Winston Duke
TV.
is watching,
Oh,
that
there
Gabe
you
is
go.
watching. Yes,
Yeah.
the score is 11-11.
Yeah.
It's all over the place. I mean, it's on the ambulance when they drive away, presumably to a safer place. And I think that's a sure sign that, you know, things are going to be rocky for quite some time and then maybe rebalance the exact same way they were before, which sucks. But, you know, this was an interesting touch that it basically just felt like a bad omen to me. Like the second it's brought up and the second I first saw that visual, it's like something felt sinister and wrong. And also, it was the idea of seeing more and more 11-11s, basically signifying that, you know, the time is coming for Adelaide. She's getting closer.
Well, it's like
and
she
you
says,
know
right?
it. Exactly.
She keeps feeling more coincidences, like something's coming for her.
Yeah.
And the just in case anyone didn't Google it, the actual verse Jeremiah 11:11 is, "Therefore thus said the Lord, behold, I will bring evil upon them, which they shall not be able to escape. And though they shall cry unto me, I will not hearken unto them." Ooh.
oh, boy.
Not the most uplifting phrase in the
No.
Bible.
Yeah, not whatsoever. I'm remembering something else now. I mean, you know, I'm not very well read on the Bible, but there was also something about that passage in general, like beyond just that one line that hinted at what the whole thing would mean.
Gosh, I haven't. It's been a long time since I was a churchgoer. I must
I don't
confess.
want to forget that. But I'm probably going to forget it and not being able to Google it in time. Yeah, I think I'm at a loss for
Something
this.
I like, even, I don't know, just on a really basic level, is just the way 11:11 so concisely just represents like doppelgangers and things reflecting back on each other. Just the visual of it itself feels like the movie.
Yeah.
Feels like those cutout men that she rips apart at the end.
I found a brief explanation that kind of
Okay.
puts it into perspective for me. So this is coming from an Esquire article, and they have a larger portion of the passage here and then write, in other words, Jeremiah often prophesies certain doom for the worship of false idols. So that is obviously evident throughout us. And, you know, this sounds quite a bit like how Adelaide's doppelganger, Red, believes she is being tested by God to lead the tethered from doom. Jeremiah's narrative in the Bible also coincides with the exile of the Jews in Babylon, which sounds similar to the exile of the tethered below ground. So there's a lot more to that than just that one line, I think, that kind of, you know, basically seeps into a whole bunch of the other visuals and themes in the movie.
Yeah, no doubt. That's something I would have to do a lot more research
Oh,
about.
man. Wait, here's another passage from somebody who wrote this on Reddit. Even though us as a horror and the tethered were portrayed as vicious villains, not once did we see any of Red's family members try to actually kill their counterpart with serious intent. To me, it seemed more like they were playing with them until the very end, knowing very well that they themselves would have to be the ones to die in order to complete God's test. The link between them had to be broken somehow, and thou shalt not kill, right?
That's interesting. I think I remember seeing that on Reddit, or something like that.
That's not entirely okay. So it's not false in that this Reddit user says Red's family members. So I wonder what the differentiation is with Tim Heidecker and Elisabeth Moss characters who most certainly walk into that house with the intent to kill.
Yeah, I'm not. I remember seeing that on Reddit. What I was going to say is I'm not super sold on it. I'm also not totally sold on this idea of God's mission or this being a very religious film in general. I think that's a smaller part of it, and it's as we've discussed at length, it's a film about America, not about religion necessarily. I could be wrong, but those aren't the major themes I'm taking out of it.
Yeah, that I think I'm in agreement with you on that. So Jeremiah 11:11. Is there anything else that we're missing? There's going to be so many things because the second we wrap this, I'm going to think of like 500 things I wanted to bring up.
I mean, you know, we haven't even really touched on the great tradition of doppelganger horror in general, which I'm a huge fan of. And
This also had dance horror in it. I didn't even make that
Yeah,
connection
I
until just
know.
now.
You know I did. 3 in the book. Yeah. I'm ready for this trend. 3 makes a trend, so let's keep it up, filmmakers. More dance horror 2020.
I could get behind that.
Yeah, you got my vote.
I mean, I really, truly have not stopped thinking about Climax.
I love that
So
movie.
clearly it did something.
Yeah, I'd like to revisit the use of actually dance and music and rhythm in this film. Because, a lot of people have focused in on the fact that when she's like, get in the rhythm,
Yeah.
she's not actually in the
On
rhythm.
the beat, yeah.
Were we meant to take that she stopped dancing or that after the switch? Because I was a little confused on that.
I've been thinking about this a lot. I mean, I do definitely take it as though she stopped dancing.
Okay.
I think the conversation she has with Elisabeth Moss and her reaction to walking down in the basement where they have the ballet bar kind of signifies it. I get the feeling that she was a wonderful dancer as a child, and there was something that dance brought out in Red down below that triggered something, and I think that triggered something with Adelaide too, where I think they both felt a connection there.
Yeah.
I think that was the moment where Red down below realized she was capable of making her own decisions, and that's basically when her plan started, or she started to put everything together. And meanwhile, Adelaide up above felt the strong connection. She felt those feelings that she was feeling when they got closer to Santa Cruz, so she immediately shied away from dancing.
Interesting.
That was my final interpretation after 2 viewings.
I need to revisit on that because I wasn't super clear on that timeline from my watch, and I'm not discounting the idea that her rhythm is off because it's wonky, but it's just she couldn't have been a dancer if she had no rhythm. So this is especially because I can't remember how I've been tying this into the Jason theory as well. Because he's also off the rhythm.
Yeah. And also, it's just like the idea of her even saying to him, get in
Yeah.
rhythm, could have a double meaning.
Well, something I enjoyed even more than that was realizing, watch her face when Winston Duke goes, this is a classic. That's when she starts to get into it, because she doesn't know the song, but she just got told it's a classic.
Yeah.
So she's leaning
There's
into
so
that.
many little things. I can't handle it.
I also really liked when she's talking to Elisabeth Moss on the beach, and she says she has trouble. She says like I have trouble finding the words, or I have trouble speaking, or something like that. And it's like, because you literally didn't talk as a child.
Yeah.
Things like that. Right?
That, and another thing that just popped in my mind that I saw in another explainer, and I can't credit it because I can't remember where it came from. I also didn't see this with my own eyes while I was watching it, was someone spotted a gold pair of scissors in their house before the tethered even break in.
Interesting.
So it's like, what would that mean? Why would she have it? Is that a sign that somebody from the tethered... Okay. So I think another thing is, doesn't Pluto not have a pair of scissors? Pluto doesn't have a pair of scissors. What if Pluto was in that house and swapped himself with Jason the year prior and left the scissors there?
Could be. I'm not
I
on
don't
this
know.
Jason train, but there is stuff there to support the theory.
The more I find, the closer I creep. I'm still not completely sold on it either, but putting that together in this very moment definitely just made me think a little more about it.
I would see it as more likely, personally, as like Pluto was in the house earlier, because we don't know exactly when those people show up or from where, or comparatively to when the family gets home from their day at the beach. And we know that the man holding the Jeremiah sign has been killed and replaced by the time they get there. So those creatures have been out from during the day when they're out.
Okay. That is a possibility too.
But anyway, also, like we were talking about with the rabbits and how Jason wants to keep that again suggests to me that he is just a above ground boy.
Yeah. Or he's someone who became an above ground boy a year ago and just got used to the idea that rabbits are pets and not food. I don't know.
I'm
know.
not
There's
sold.
so many
Are you guys
things.
sold?
Yeah, I'm actually curious to know what your take is on this particular one, because this seems to be one of the theories that's so, like, I mean, either yes or no, you buy into it or you don't. It seems to be splitting a lot of viewers.
Of wind really fast.
Yeah. So I'm definitely curious to know what you guys think. It is time to close this out. Is there any like last minute thing that we want to hit?
What a fun movie to talk about. I mean,
seriously,
it's a good one to sit, have a few beers with your friends, talk about the film. It's really, really fun.
This is why I love it so much. I love when a movie sends me on my way feeling both satisfied in the moment, but also like just eager to start talking about it with other movie lovers and dissecting it and figuring out what we take from it. Also because it's just so beautiful how so many people latch onto something different. Because I think this movie does operate on so many different levels, no matter how you want to look at it. I think there's a lot of commentary from a national standpoint, but also personal on how we behave as individuals. So it's just been very interesting seeing what individuals gravitate towards and what they take away from this movie most, like above all else in it. So I just find this whole conversation fascinating, and I look forward to seeing it continue.
Absolutely.
Alrighty, guys, that is our non-spoiler. Whoa, that didn't happen. This is the tethered version of Perri, who came to the conversation a little too late. You have just experienced our spoiler-heavy conversation about Us. Again, chime in what you think about this Jason theory, but also if you have other theories or caught things that we missed, please tell us, because clearly we want to keep talking about this one. So do chime in the comment section and tell us. Haleigh, where can everybody find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter at Haleigh Foutch. You can find me on Instagram at HaystackMcGroovy. And as always, you can find me on Collider.com.
And you can catch me on Twitter and Instagram at Nemiroff on Movie Talk every single Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at 4 p.m. PT Live. Haleigh's going to be on soon, too. I believe at the time that everybody's listening to this, you'll be on tomorrow, which is a Wednesday at 4 p.m. PT Live. Am I right or am I wrong?
Tuesday, darling.
Tuesday. So you're on today.
Don't try to convince me we're closer to the weekend than we are.
I'm looking at the schedule right now. If you are listening to this episode of The Witching Hour, when it goes up on Tuesday the 26th, you can expect to see the one and only Haleigh Foutch and Scott Mans on today's Movie Talk. It'll be a good time. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you've watched any of the clips on YouTube, that's also greatly appreciated. Please tell everybody you know about The Witching Hour, because we love this show. We never want to stop doing it. You guys rock for being a part of it all. So thank you again. You have officially survived The Witching Hour.